Hi, geometry students. So you have already completed days 1 through 5. Way to go. Awesome job. Those were all on Delta Math, or some of you did the work on your own sheet of paper, which was perfectly fine. For days 6 through 15, we are going to move on to some new content, okay? So every day, I'm going to have a video posted, and I am going to work through examples and just do my best to try to teach you all from my room, okay? So I'm really sad that we can't be there together, be in our classroom together, but we will make do and get through this month best we can. So first unit we're going to jump into is area and perimeter. Those shouldn't be brand new words to you all. I think you have learned them at some point previously, maybe middle school, maybe even 4th, 5th grade at the very basic level. So that's what we're going to start with, and that's going to take about days 6 through 12 or 13. I can't really remember right now, but we're going to start day 6 with area. And I am just going to walk through the examples that I have worked out on a PDF file for you all, and kind of talk through where the numbers came from, where the formulas came from, all that stuff that we're going to use. Okay, so when I say area, that is just the amount of space that something takes up. So the best real world example I can come up with is whenever you are doing a floor in a house. When you're buying carpet, or you're buying hardwood or tile, any of those things, you have to know the area of the room, okay? You have to know how much material you need to cover that flat surface, okay, that flat floor. So that is the best example of area in the real world, and we're going to focus on area of triangles, of quadrilaterals, and with those quadrilaterals we're going to look at squares, rectangles, parallelograms, and trapezoids. Okay, so those 4 shapes, and then we're going to deal with circles. And I know we've not done anything else with circles this year, but we will as we go throughout the school year. We're going to see more of circles, and so this is kind of our easing into parts of a circle and some knowledge about that shape. Okay, so let's get started with area. All right, so first thing we're going to look at here is a rectangle. And whenever I am finding the area of a rectangle, that formula is base times height. You might have heard length times width, or L times W, but really we're dealing with base times height. And you're going to see that a lot of times. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to figure out how to hold this camera. That's not going to work. Okay, there we go. So with base times height, you might see it written as BH, which is just base times height. And all you have to do to find the area of a rectangle are multiply 2 consecutive sides. Okay, so 2 sides that are next to each other, they're not going to be the same length unless it's a square. But you multiply the base, which would be 4.1, times the height, which is 6.5, and you get 26.65. Now, an important thing with area, because a lot of it does apply to the real world, is that we include units, okay? So you can see here our units are yards, and you always want to write your unit, which is yards, and when you do area, you have to write it squared, okay? So yards squared is how I would say that. And you hear about area when they're talking about a house, and they're like, how many square feet is that house or that room or that building? Okay, that's all examples of area, and all of those units are squared units. The nice thing about area is that base times height, that is the foundation of every formula we're going to look at except for the circle. Okay, so a rectangle, you multiply base times height. For a square, same thing, base times height. So here I'd have 10 times 10, and I get 100 kilometers squared. And an easy way to think about squared, and I want it to wait until I had this, is that I could split this shape up into 10. I could split each side 10 ways, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we're going to pretend that all of those columns are equal. And then I would divide this way into 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if I counted every square, and let's again pretend they're all the same size, there would be 100 squares in that shape. And that's why you've got 100 kilometers squared, okay? Because you're going to have 100 squares in that shape. So that's a square. And then guess what? For a parallelogram, the formula is the exact same. Base times height. Now, you notice that the height is not actually part of the parallelogram, right? They have extended that side, and then they've drawn a line, a perpendicular line, to represent the height. And that's the most important, an important part of this is that the height of any shape is going to be the vertical distance from the base to the opposite side, right? Straight up and down. And it has to be perpendicular. So they had to extend the side and draw it on the outside. But you're still going to do 5 times 4.6, and you get 23 miles squared as your answer for the area of this parallelogram. So recap really quick. Rectangle, square, and parallelogram all have the same formula, base times height. So when you do your practice problems, all you've got to do is take the base times the height of those shapes and multiply them, and that is your answer. All right? So that is those three. Now let's talk about a trapezoid. So a trapezoid is the fourth quadrilateral we're going to look at, and its formula is a little trickier because with a trapezoid, you've got two bases that are different sizes, right? In a square, in a rectangle, in a parallelogram, those bases, so like here and here, those are the same, right? We know opposite sides are congruent in parallelograms and rectangles and squares. But in a trapezoid, our bases are different sizes. So we're going to find the average of those bases, which means we're going to add them together and divide it by 2. And that's what I have written out here. Base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. And then we're going to take that average, multiply it by the height. Okay, so you're going to mostly see it written like this. Base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times the height. Plug those numbers in. And it's really important on your calculator to do this step first. So first find the average of the bases and then multiply that answer by the height. See, I simplified that. The average of my bases was 7.6. Then I multiplied it by the height of 6 and I got my answer. Okay, so base times height is your foundation here, but you have to find the average of the bases and multiply it by the height. Okay, moving on, we have a triangle, and the triangle also includes base times height, but you have to take that base times height and divide it in half or multiply it by 1/2. Okay, so simplified, it's going to be 1/2 BH, so 1/2 base times height. And all you're going to do is type in your calculator 1/2 times the base times the height. Now, I have 2 examples of triangles here, and the difference is where the height is located. So if you notice in this triangle, this is my base, and my height is the perpendicular distance here, right? It went from the base to the opposite vertex, right? And that was inside the triangle, and it was 5 feet, and so that was the height. Whereas here, there is no way that I can draw a perpendicular line from this base to that vertex, right? I can't draw a straight up and down line. So I had to make the base a little longer. Okay, I drew an imaginary line onto the base, and then I was able to draw a perpendicular line to that opposite vertex and find my height. Okay, so sometimes you will see the height of a triangle on the outside of the shape, and sometimes you'll see the height of a triangle on the inside of the shape. It doesn't change anything. I just don't want you to get confused on where to look. Okay, so same formula, 1/2 base times height. So 1/2 times 4 times 4.8, and you get 9.6 inches squared as your answer. All right, so that is your overview of area of those shapes and how to find them. And this worksheet with the problems will be uploaded on Classroom next to this video, and then you will go ahead and just complete the Google form that I attach with it. All right, so if you have any questions, let me know.